Hello, we are gathered here together because Paul McCartney has released his first solo album for 10 years. That is an album without Wings, or indeed without any group. And I'm here to talk to Paul about it and one or two other McCartney things, which is very nice for me, and I hope it'll be nice for Paul. Paul, good evening, hello, welcome, and other expressions of greeting.
Good evening, Tom.
Why have you done a solo album at this stage of your career,
I couldn't think of anything else to do, actually, Tim. No, seriously, folks.
I mean, it's called McCartney 2, which
Yeah.
implies to me that it's perhaps a follow-up to McCartney 1, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Is it a follow-up, or are you...
Yeah, sort of, yeah. What happened was I originally just went into the studio to have a mess around, because I was fed up of formally making records, you know, going in and doing it all properly. I'd just made an album like that, and I wanted to just hire a machine, which I did. I hired a 16-track machine and just put a microphone into the back, so it's a very primitive way of doing it. And you bypass the mixing console. And I wanted to just go in for like about 2 weeks and just have a mess around and definitely not do anything for a new album and definitely not try and do anything properly and definitely experiment with anything, you know, and just any little noise I wanted to do. This was going to be total freedom. And I ended up, I kind of enjoyed it so much that I ended up keeping the machine for about 6 weeks. And eventually when I played it to a couple of people, you know, just family and local people and stuff, they said, yeah, you know, take a couple of tracks off here and there and it should be your new album.
So it's possible that it perhaps couldn't have ever got released. You might have failed with the experiment and just left it on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah, but that was all it was for, really. It was just for... I've got a cassette machine in my car, and when I'm driving around, you know, I like to have kind of something playing. So I just thought the worst come to the worst. Actually, I'll just have a nice little funky bit of music for me to play in the car, you know, when there's a friend in the car and say, listen to this, you know. And just as a private little thing, you know, if it wasn't good enough to be released. So that was, like, half of the enjoyment was knowing it wasn't going to be released.
But it was.
Which it was, unfortunately.
But you were also, therefore, the engineer, the producer, the artist, everything.
Yeah.
Do you find that if, for example, you're the engineer, that you perhaps feel that Paul McCartney, the engineer, has to be seen to be doing something on this record, so maybe on occasions you're giving more time to the technique and to the electronics than you are to the actual songs?
No, well, see, if I'd have been doing it, if I'd have known in the end an album was going to come out where I would have on the credits engineered, written, produced, and so on, so by, then I would have probably got worried by those things and thought, well, you know. In fact, at one time I was thinking of including a little apology to all real engineers and real drummers and real guitar players. But as I say, it was just a loon for me. So it didn't even occur to me I was engineering it. I just had a machine. And the 16-track machine, which is like a glorified cassette recorder, but it's a professional machine. Microphone right into the back of it. And then I would record, let's say, a drum kit, and I'd just listen to it back. And if I didn't like it, I'd just move the microphone, because I didn't have all the technical EQs and echoes and all the gimmicks. So I just had to move the mic. So it wasn't exactly engineering, you know. It was more like moving mics, really.
Do you think that song-wise it, in fact, causes a great departure for you? Because to the totally uninitiated, they would say, well, it still sounds like Paul McCartney and a rock group. I mean, do you think, in fact, that artistically, in the end, it's in fact made much difference?
I don't know, really. I'm probably not the person to ask about that. In my opinion, yeah, I think there is something different about it. We had some other recordings that we were working on. Actually, it was the live version of Coming Up, and the solo version is off this. And we were working with an engineer, and he listened. We'd been working on mixing the live one. We'd been working on it for half an hour or so. And then I said, wait a minute, I'll just play you this other one. And he got a totally different feeling off the solo one to the live one.
Yeah.
The live one sounded like stuff you might expect. The solo thing, I think there's just a lot of things I wouldn't have done, a lot of raw edges, a lot of silly sounds that I just did for my own amusement, that normally I might think, well, you know, that's just a bit of a goof, and we'll straighten this all up later. So I think there is something different about it. I mean, I wouldn't fight or argue the point, but for me there's probably something a little bit different.
But most of the numbers, you've been quoted as saying, in fact, were almost made up as you went along, and only perhaps Waterfalls, that was the only one which was actually a song before you went to record it.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas with, say, the last Wings album, that wasn't true. You would have gone in with most of the songs ready.
Yeah. Well, that was, as I say, that's true. That's why I did it this way, because I would just turn up in the morning, bang a couple of drums, because I knew I felt like banging a couple of drums. But I didn't know where I was going to go from there.
Do you, in fact, as a songwriter of both words and music, regard one side as more important than the other? Which comes first?
No, I think they're both as important as each other. Myself, I don't really feel like a lyricist, but I think at certain times I've done some good words. I feel easier with music. It's just the way I am, you know.
Yeah.
It comes easier, comes quicker. I can go away kind of now and have a song before I could have a set of words, whereas with you, you'd have a set of words before you'd have a tune. Possibly.
Well, possibly, yes. I'm a slightly different case because I can't write tunes anyway. But
well, I'm right then.
yes. But I do feel that certainly in the case of some of your very famous old songs, like Yesterday, Here, There and Everywhere, For No One, the lyric is so strong, and I often wonder if the really strong lyrical idea inspired those great tunes. I mean, the tunes are obviously very good as well.
No, it's all with me. It's in truth, it can be anyway. You know, because interviewers over the years have always asked which comes first, music or something. And you always have to say, well, I remember All My Loving was a words thing. I just wrote it on a coach and I had those words and then I put a tune to it. But most of my stuff isn't like that. Most of my stuff, it's a tune looking for words. And
do you think on a song like, say, Band on the Run, you might have missed out on a standard, if that matters, simply because the words are fairly obscure and aren't instantly accessible?
Well, you know, but I don't know, really. I mean, I don't write for that, really. I just sort of comes into my head and stuff, and if it pleases me. I mean, you're talking about this album saying there's not a lot of stuff that's very good lyrics. So you've got one or two. No, but there are one or two that stick out for you. So some of the ones, like, you won't like, or may not like. I mean, there's a song there called Nobody Knows, which there's no way you could look at it as a set of lyrics and think that is strong lyrics.
Because
but for me, actually, the
12-bar boogie, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but still, for me, I like the words on that. I mean, they're very simple. A lot of them have been done before. They don't actually say an awful lot, except they say nobody knows. And actually, the more you think about that, the more you think about all the millions of experts we have on the telly every night or everywhere telling us how to do it. And a year later, they're wrong, or they're out of office, or the world isn't flat after all. And so I attach like a lot of importance to just that idea of nobody knows, and that's the way I like it, just so nobody knows. It wouldn't be seen as a really good lyric, but you see the way I'm thinking of it, I think it is a good lyric. But it's in I approach a lot of stuff in that funny kind of roundabout way, you know, rather than just looking at it and saying, that's a great bit of poetry. There's like other reasons why I think things make good words, you know.
Do you feel you have any message to give to the world through your songs, or are you just saying what you feel like saying at any one particular time?
The second part.
Whatever
I'll come
it was.
back next week.
Do you think there's any significance in the fact that most people will probably say, and already are saying, that Waterfalls is the best song on the album, in fact one of the best songs you've done for a long time? Do you think that possibly, purely from the song point of view, that it is best to have the song before you start recording? Yeah,
it may be, actually. As I say, you know, this wasn't intended to be an album. I have a feeling now that, like, there's some interesting things on it. Certainly people haven't come up to me and said, oh, you can tell. That's the only... I mean, if in a way, I don't need to tell you that. You know, I could say, yeah, I wrote them all, and actually Tony Brabham engineered it all. It's all been done professionally. But it could be right. Could be. It's definitely the way I've always done it. But this was purposely to get things off my chest doing this album. You know, I really felt as though I was just going to be bored if I just walked into another studio, the same old thing again, and wrote some songs. It was just something I had to do.
I mean, of
one of these days is sort of talking about, if I can move to one of these days swiftly, that's talking about one of these days when my feet are on the ground.
Well, that's something everybody can instantly relate to use an overused phrase. But, and of course, two or three of them, well, two in fact, are instrumentals anyway, so they have no lyrical content at all.
But one of them nearly did have some lyrics.
Which one was that?
There's one called Frozen Jap. Or in Japan, it's called Frozen Japanese.
Now, is that, one has to ask this, is that in any way related to your slight problems in Japan?
No, it was done beforehand. All of this stuff was done summer of '79. And then my Japanese holiday took place in 1980, beginning of 1980. And that is a bit unfortunate, that, because it will be seen by some people as to be a bit of a frozen Jap. But actually, it's a working title that stuck. When I did the tune, I was always imagining having sort of and all of that on it, you know, because this was I was just doing this for my own insanity, you know, I wasn't thinking of it as a record. And I like doing all that, you know, that sort of funny Japanese singing. But I couldn't think of a title for it. I was hoping it would be called, hoping I could think of something like, you know, Crystalline Wonder Around Mount Fuji. Or I was looking for something short, but that said that, you know, that postcard you see of winter in Japan with Mount Fuji with the snow on the top. Snow-capped Fuji, you know, it might have been called, or something like that. I was looking for something pretty. But I couldn't think of anything, so to remind myself what it was all about, I just wrote down on the books Frozen Jap, meaning, you know, frozen, that's the ice, and Jap, it's vaguely oriental. And it stuck, you know, and I was working with other people, and they kind of, you know...
And you weren't tempted to change the title at the last minute?
So, I wasn't going to change it, but it turned out that in Japan, the word Jap is, like, still thought of as being very derogatory. Although I think over here it's been diffused a lot. I think, like, the man who's got a clothes firm, who's a Japanese guy who calls himself Jap, he calls the clothes firm Jap. I think things like that have brought it, for me, a little bit more into line with Yank and Limey and Pom. You know, they're not as offensive as, like, Wop, and there are certain ones that are well offensive, Yid, you know, and those are the ones you don't use. And I think the Japanese think that Jap is still in that kind of thing. For me, it's becoming a borderline case, because of a lot of Japanese in the West, their own attitude to it. So anyway, out of not wanting to kind of do a snub to anybody who might be offended, in Japan we've called it Frozen Japanese. This is a little bit timid, you know, but
might as well.
Rather than offend.